Welcome into Dental Profits. I am your host, Sean Crabtree, and I'm so excited to be with you on a Friday and have a guest who I wish was in studio, Mr. John Stamper. We're going to talk about CE. We're going to talk about Digital Tradeshow. You don't want to miss this. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Hi, folks. I'm Sean Crabtree.
And I'm Cameron Bailey.
We don't want to change the way you do business.
We want to change the way you're thinking about your business.
We want you to have better results, happier clients, and make more money.
Let's get it started.
And welcome back. The show that is all about you having happier clients, better results, making more money. I'm so happy to have Mr. John Stamper here, who is right up the road, actually, and I wish he was in studio. You guys are going to enjoy John as much as I do. John, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Good morning, Sean.
And you and I were just talking about how we're both a little rusty after the fourth holiday.
Yes.
So hopefully, you know, you're going to be able to carry this interview.
No pressure. I'll do that. No problem. I'll do my best. You know, when they slap a holiday right in the middle of the week, it's like, what do you do? Do I work? Do I not work? I'm with you, man. Totally.
Listen, so I'm just gonna. So I did my part. I introduced you. Now it's your show. That's right.
All right, let's roll. Well, first off, thanks for having me on. This is great. I love what you guys do on your podcast, and certainly, you know, bringing together a lot of resources for your audience and all that. Real brief intro. Been in dentistry for about 15 years. Started at Brasseler USA, was there for about 10 years, worked as a sales rep, regional manager, worked at the home office, created an inside sales team, did a lot of cool things there. Great experience, got to work with a lot of key opinion leaders over the years across the country. Then I went to the other side of the counter and the dental practice, moved to Louisville, Kentucky, and worked for Mortenson Dental Partners, an awesome large dental group here based in Louisville, Kentucky. Wayne Mortenson was the founder. Such an amazing man, doctor, and learned a lot from him. But I got the opportunity, Sean, to work with a lot of their dental practices across the country. They're a growing organization. Got to work with the dentists, the hygienists, the office managers, dental assistants, everybody, practice growth, team development. And I learned a lot now on the other side of the counter, so that when the dental reps came in and now knew that there was some on the other side that knew their world, certainly try to do what I could to bridge that gap. Did that for about 3 years.
That's one of the reasons, John, that I wanted to have you on here, just to sort of I was teasing about my intro, just to sort of lay the groundwork here. The reason that I wanted to have you on as a guest is because, first of all, you and I really hit it off, and I love the way you think. We share a lot of the same beliefs and values. But more importantly, you have been, I mean, you started in one aspect of dentistry, you then went behind the counter, you've been all over the place, and then actually you've come full circle, and now you're a dental entrepreneur from a couple of different standpoints. So you bring a unique sort of perspective that I think our audience will learn a lot from. Just as a way of just explanation, for those that don't know, tell us a little bit. You got your start at Brasseler for about 10 years. Tell us a little bit about that. What is, for those that don't know, what is Brasseler?
Yeah, so Brasseler is a brand that's been around for many, many years. Many people will know Brasseler for the diamond burrs, a lot of the rotary instruments, burrs, carbides, polishers, all of that. When I came to Brasseler, Sean, it was when the company decided to start selling dental handpieces, which was at that time was the NSK brand, and then also endodontics and hygiene. And so when I first started, was out in California for about 2 years, and I worked as a sales specialist, worked with a lot of the reps. We went directly into the offices and introduced the dental handpieces, did demos, all of that. So Brasseler, again, is one of those brands that's been out there for many, many years, always been known as such a quality products and things like that. And it was a great company for me to be able to learn dentistry.
So I'm curious, and you and I were talking just a little bit about this earlier. I mean, you as a manufacturer rep, you worked with a lot of distributor reps, and like you said, you went right into the office, and that was, I mean, you did that for almost a decade, right? So
yeah.
So I'm curious to know, what do you see has changed in the last few years as far as distribution? The landscape in dentistry is changing on many different fronts, but one of those we could talk about first, probably before we get into some of the others, is and two of those you actually are entrepreneurs in, but how has the landscape changed when it comes to distribution? And how do you see, I'd love to know how you see the future. And I'm gonna pin you down, John. I mean, you've been in dentistry for about 13 years. I want to know, what's your prediction?
Oh, the
there are
prediction.
lots of distributors here that we work very closely with who are in the audience, and of course their focus is big time on the relationship with
Yep.
the end users and the doctors and so forth. And it's a changing landscape. There's no doubt about it. I'd love to know how you think it's changed and where do you see the future?
So a couple things on that note. I think going back when I first started, you had as a rep about 10 minutes to get your pitch to the practice in regards to what you had and how you could help them or whatever the case may be. Now, fast forward 15 years, you probably have like 4 minutes to get that message across. And there is 10 times as much information out there. And so, whereas I think in the past, a practice would ask, leave me a piece of literature and I'll go ahead and I'll look at it when I get some time or whatever the case may be. Now, Sean, as you know, that literature in many cases is out the window and I'm going to go online. And not only am I going to go online, but I'm also going to try to find other people that are using the product. And so I think as a rep going into a practice, you have to be able to connect be a resource in so many other ways. In that regard. And I think I'm not just going to come in and talk about my products and service, but I'm going to try to help you with a lot of other people that I'm connected to in the industry.
And listen, again, this is why I always enjoy talking with you, John, because you're thinking exactly the same way I do. And if you're a rep listening to this, the bottom line is that is a huge piece of value from somebody other than us. And we're talking about the same thing all the time. You got to learn to bring value to the relationship that is much bigger than the products and services that you're talking about. Absolutely, no doubt about it. Now, let me go to the other end real quick, and then we'll jump into some other stuff. What do you tell the young doctors who maybe don't fully understand the value? Let me say it differently. What would you tell the young doctors who are listening to this? They're looking at a distribution rep as simply somebody who offers product or service. What would you tell them? What would you have them learn from somebody who's been behind the scenes manufacturer? You've seen all of that scenario, you've seen the changes, and then you've also been on the other side of the counter. What would you tell that young doctor about what they should be focusing on and looking for from their reps?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think two things. The first is, and I'll start with a story, Sean. So when I worked at Mortensen and I worked with some of the doctors, some of the questions would be, we produced this last year. We want to grow our practice. We want to do more procedures. Maybe we want to get into endodontics. And if they had never done endodontics before, other than when they were in school and they learned how to do it with hand files, and they weren't aware of all the things out there. Question number one that would come to me with some of these doctors is, who do I start with? Am I going to my distributor rep? I know they've come in. There's a lot of things that they talk about, but I know that they're connected to different endodontic companies and different endodontic files. So before I go anywhere, I need them. I need them at the very least to come in and educate me on what's out there. That's the first thing that I would share with them, is that with so much of the consolidation that's going on the dental manufacturing and distribution side, there's value in that. And that is that a lot of people now that are in those networks are connected to everybody else within that network. So it's going to be very rare now, I believe, that when a practice builds a great relationship with their rep, that rep is not going to, if they can't answer that direct question, they're probably going to be able to lead them to somebody else that may be able to help them with that particular topic. And so I still think that it's very difficult to replace the relationship and the reliance on somebody that can get you answers when you want to do something new. I just think it's very, very valuable. And so maybe the medium has changed. Maybe it's okay. I'm going to reach out to that person, via email, or I'm going to, listen to a podcast, whatever the case may be. But they still need that information. And so I just think that there are so many. After being on both sides, Sean, the companies and the newer technologies that are out there, even more so, are more complicated. You can't just, in many cases, purchase one of these and then do it yourself and walk away. You need support. You can't.
And what you're touching on is important. And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I've got story after story after story after story after story where if you understand the value, the full value of the relationship that you can have with your rep, with your distribution rep, if you fully understand the value of that relationship, then you're talking a much bigger opportunity. Certainly when it comes to things like referral sources and information on new services and so forth, there's no doubt about that. I think one of the most valuable things too, well, I'll give you a great story. I had a client, and we may have actually talked about this, you and I had a client in just outside of Illinois. I can't remember the little town now. It skips my mind. But anyway, he and I we were coaching the office, and we were on a video conference call. It was one of those freak things. He's leaning back in his chair during the meeting and fell just right, broke his hip right there in the meeting. It turned out to be a big deal. They had to go in and do surgery and actually replace the hip. So he was out for a minimum of 6 weeks. The distribution rep we had a great relationship with. I was on the phone with him that night, and finally about 1 a.m., he had the next 6 weeks booked with associates and with it. And actually, even after that, one of the doctors that came in actually became a partner in the practice down the road, simply because of that situation that never would have happened if it wasn't for the rep. And I think one of the things that we're working on also is making sure that the reps understand, if they understand what you're talking about, the value of that relationship that they have with the doctor, there's a million different ways they can bring value from a consultative standpoint.
Right.
There's so much more. And so I figured that you would say the same thing that I would there. If you're a young doctor, rule number one, understand this is a relationship business across the board. Everything about it is relationships with your team, with your patients, and of course, with your suppliers. So there you go. John, tell me this. You have played on both sides. Now I'm going to put you on the you're the expert of the day, so I'm going to get your opinion on all this stuff.
Okay.
When it comes to, you went from manufacturer to Mortensen, which is a very respected DSO in that area, and I'm sure that was a very cool experience. Did you?
Absolutely.
You were working closely with the Mortensen family, right?
Yeah. It was great, and I think that what was so great about it is they appreciated the experience that I had on the manufacturing side. And, and of course, I was super hungry and curious to want to get my hands in everything I could, dental practice side, the operations, the team. So that's just what made it a really, really good experience. And it was certainly at the time where they wanted to grow. And so there was value on both sides.
I'd love to know what John Stamper, write this down, July 6th, 2018. What is your expectation? What is your prediction on the DSO model, and where do you see opportunities for value with like a Mortensen versus some of the big ginormous others? Where do you see challenges and opportunities for the patient and everybody else involved?
Yeah. So I think we're in an interesting paradigm. I think when people talk about large groups in dentistry, so often the conversation starts with medical. A lot of people will say, that's what happened with medical. You had the primary care physician, and then all of a sudden they're gone and they're working in the larger hospitals, and dentistry is next. Well, I think what's interesting is that happened at a time when technology and the resources and the availability of resources was not exactly where it is today. So there's no question that there is a positive trend towards, I think, not only some of the larger groups, Sean, but I think what some other people are recognizing, I think there's value there, is why can't you have a hybrid model? Why can't you be 5 or 6 practices in a geographic location that want to band together and form some sort of group? The difference now, I believe, is that the other thing a lot of people would say is when a dentist went to school, they didn't teach them business. They didn't teach them marketing. They didn't teach them HR. They didn't teach them people development. And so a lot of the large groups in the DSOs, that is their value proposition. We'll help you with all of that. We'll help you with all the back end so that you can operate as a provider and do what you do best as a dentist with your team. Well, now all of a sudden what you have is things have changed a little bit. There are consultants all over the industry of many, many likes, different skill sets. There's tons of technology companies. There's outsourced HR. There's all kinds of things that exist now that if someone does want to run their own practice, it doesn't mean that it's easy, but it certainly could be a little bit easier than maybe it was 5-10 years ago. So
Yeah,
I think it's
agree.
interesting. I think it's a very interesting time, because whereas maybe 5 or 6 years ago, Sean, I think when the trend was really, really high and it was almost like a no-brainer, that's what I'm going to do. I think there's been a lot of resources that have been pushed into the industry that are at the very least making people think twice about it if they decide they want to be a dental practice owner or they want to work for a large group. And I think there's benefits on both sides. I think it depends on the person and what they choose to do. Probably no different, Sean, than somebody that decides that they want to be an employee for a very reputable company and that's what they want to do, or somebody wants to be an owner. It's your choice.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analogy. Yeah, I do. I think that's a pretty good analogy. The thing that I would throw out is, if you are a private practice and if you see value in becoming a private practice, if you're a younger doctor and you're about to maybe jump out on your own or whatever, the thing you said is totally true. I mean, there are plenty of resources out there to have you be on a level playing field with some of the bigger boys. And of course, the value with that too is because you own the place, you're closest to what's actually going on with your patients versus maybe a DSO model. And some are good and some are not so good, but I've learned that the farther away you remove ownership from the end user in almost anything, that can be doesn't mean it is, but it can be a tricky situation. It can be a very low value sort of proposition for the end user, in this case, the patient. So that's interesting. I appreciate you letting me put you on the spot with that. You were diplomatically political on that.
Well, I don't know if there's a perfect answer. I mean, I will say this. I always come down to this one question, which is somebody asking themselves why. Like, why does somebody do it? We know that there are a lot of younger dentists that do it because they can go to a group right out of school. Certainly all the attention is out there about the debt and all that. I choose to look at that differently, Sean. I mean, I don't know about you, but last time I checked, U.S. World Report, dentistry is still one of the top professions in the country. Yep. And either you choose to look at it as debt or you choose to look at it as an investment in your career. Most dentists are going to have, there's still people that have teeth. And for as long as people have teeth, they're going to have a job and be able to pay back that debt. So it's not like other types of debt that people look at. And
that's a really good point. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other side of that too is, what really does somebody want to get out of being a part of the DSO? Is it because you feel like their marketing or their economies of scale is going to be able to provide you discounts on the products and services? Well, I mean, a lot of companies now are finding innovative ways to do that anyway. So it'll be interesting to see where things go.
That's a good point. So John, tell us, I really sort of interrupted your train of thought there. You were starting to tell us a moment ago, I mean, you've been in dentistry for, 13 years or so, right?
It's about 15-ish.
15 years.
Yeah.
So you've played several different roles. You've been on the manufacturing side. You've been behind the desk. You worked with Mortensen as they were growing, and now you got a couple of different things going on. Tell us about sort of what you have going on. What brought you to those things? Let's talk about the Digital Tradeshow.
Yeah,
that's a pretty cool idea, man. What's the deal?
So the Digital Tradeshow grew out of the experience on both sides of the counter, which was I started to see a lot of people talking about Amazon and dental practice going online to order their products, and having a spot in my heart for every dental company, every dental manufacturer and distributor out there who each week is learning new things, going into a practice, knocking on those doors, making those calls. Not an easy job. And most of the time with the intention of just genuinely want to share with that practice a new innovation that can help them move forward. And so I got thinking, I thought, if the dental practices are going to start going online to order their products, what I didn't want to get lost was the stories behind the companies and the people that made up those dental manufacturers and distributors. I thought that it would be valuable to create a podcast, have them come on and talk about their why, what they're excited about, and what have you. So at the very least, if a practice decides to go order a product on their phone on a Thursday night when they're having pizza with their kids, that at least they had the opportunity to know a little bit more about that company via the podcast. So that was the whole reason for it. It's been tons of fun. I think as of last week, I've done about 80 episodes and interviewing companies. I've been able to do a couple live events. Was just in Columbus, Ohio, a couple weeks ago at the ADHA and interviewed a bunch of companies there. But it kind of has expanded because now the thought process is with the changes of the trade show is we're partnering with a lot of these companies I've done the podcast with and having them offer discounts on their products and services. And so, for example, a dentist can come on, they can get an annual membership, all in an effort to be able to get discounts, kind of like what it was years ago in the trade show where you came there and that was where you got the best discount of the year. I mean, I remember people coming to the booth and saying, okay,
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I've been waiting for the last 3 months to get your special. What is it?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a really good, you said, how many episodes have you done?
Just about 80, actually.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. That is awesome. And so that's the next thing then. That's you're partnering with these guys to be able to offer those discounts. And if somebody wants to jump in on that, how do they how do they find you on the podcast?
Yeah, so what they get, so a couple things. I mean, podcasts, we're on iTunes as the Digital Tradeshow, both on iTunes and Google Play, based on whichever phone you use. And then the website is tdtradeshow.com, and that's where you can find all of the episodes, and that's where you can also find a lot of the companies that we're partnered with. I think right now we have just about 30. We've got another 15 to 20 companies in the pipeline that are going to become partners. That we're calling it the Trade Show Floor. So you can come online, check out the companies. All the partners that are on there are people that I've done a podcast with. So you can click on the podcast link, learn a little bit about who they are, and then look more into the products and services and the discounts that they're offering.
It's a wealth of information all the way around. Good stuff. Now, is that the thing that you're most excited about? Or is it the CE?
That's a trick question, man. I'm excited about all of it. I'm just trying to figure out how to focus on all of it. That's my biggest thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly excited about that, and I think the continuing education part is the other side of the business, and that's where when I left Mortensen, I got the entrepreneurial bug, and like most situations, Sean, after working inside the dental practice, I saw two things that caught my attention. One of them was really small. Quite honestly, I worked with a couple of hygienists that had got audited. They did not have their certificates for whatever reason. They went to a CE course and they weren't able to get them, and they got audited and they got fined. And I saw that frustration firsthand, and I thought to myself, there's got to be an easier way to do this. And so that really was the origin of wanting to start our original website, which was called the Dental Exchange, which we have now rebranded and kind of pivoted to CE Exchange. And we created a CE tracking tool that dentists and hygienists can use to track their continuing education digitally.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about how that works, because you and I were talking in depth about this. I mean, this is not as, there's a little more to it than if I'm just hearing this for the first time. I mean, there's more working parts here that makes it a little bit cooler. Tell us about how it all works.
Yeah, so as many of you know, you go to a CE course, they give you the paper certificate, you fly back, hopefully you had it in your bag, you come home, you go to your practice or your office, and you take that certificate, you put it in your manila folder. And then you hope and pray that your dental board doesn't audit you for 15 years and you never have to worry about it. But if they do, the whole gist of it is to, the CE tracking tool is a free account, is they create their account and it's based off of your occupation in your state. So as many of your listeners know, if you're a dentist in Tennessee, you might have to get X hours every couple of years. If you're a hygienist in Texas, it's different. And so the site is customized based on occupation and your state requirements. And as you take your courses, you upload them, it keeps track of them for you. And then we send monthly emails to let everybody know you've taken 7 hours, you got 23 left. That was one of the other things that we realized, as many people know, is like most of us, we wait till the end if we have to take any certification or any course.
Right.
And so the whole gist of that was, if you're getting an email monthly, we figured we would kindly annoy you in a nice way and say, the most calls that we get are the people when we first started that were like, for the next couple of months, you've taken 0 hours. The next month, you've taken 0 hours. They're like, I don't like this thing. What is this? Stop emailing me. Like, that's not I swear it's not. I mean, I'm just telling you what the database says. Anyways, but I think the other interesting thing is when we started it, we also partnered with the Kentucky Board of Dentistry. And what I learned in this process is a lot of the dental boards out there, the whole auditing process is challenging. As you can imagine,
Sure.
they're not highly staffed. There's not a lot of people in there. And so when they do an audit, there could be maybe one or two people in there that are having to go through all of that. So we partnered with the Kentucky Board of Dentistry. They were extremely progressive, wanted to move this into the digital age. And all of the dentists and hygienists in Kentucky use the tool. And then it also gives back-end access to the dental board to be able to keep track of who's taking courses. And so it's changing their whole audit process. So we see that as the future moving forward of dental CE and tracking it.
Wow. So it's not only a tool as a user, you're saying it's a tool for the actual board because they're using it as a tracker as well.
Correct.
So they're not overwhelmed with the man hours based on that's right. A really good idea.
Yep. So they can go in, like, for example, and it's kind of crazy, Sean. I mean, we've got the likes of what would be, if you think about it, 3.5 years worth of CE course data from many of our members. We currently have right now about 10,000 members across the country that are using it in different states. The majority are in Kentucky because of the partnership with the board, but we have all of their information in regards to all the CE courses they took, the topic, the hours, the sponsors. And as you can imagine, from a dental board perspective, that's valuable because it lets them know what are people taking, what are the types of courses they're taking, what are the future needs of the industry. There's a lot that can be used in regards to that data.
Wow, that is really cool, man. So what's the plan? What's the expansion for that? What are you looking to do?
Yeah, so a couple of things that we recently did is we had a lot of our members say to us, all right, so you've made it now so I can be a little more lazier, where now I can just put the certificates in there and have to keep track of the manila folder. But could you help me be even ultimately lazy? And when I go to a course, just have that certificate electronically go right into my account so I don't have to type in anything. So part two of this was we created a platform called My CE Market. It's a marketplace where any CE provider, so if you're a dentist that is out there doing live events, you can use the platform to sell tickets to your course. And then everybody that signs up gets a free account for the tracking tool. And then at the completion of the course, the certificate electronically then goes into their account.
Awesome.
So one of the things we're working on is continually to work with a lot of the different CE providers and people that are giving courses out there, so that if their courses are being purchased, whether it be online or live on the platform, it makes it a heck of a lot easier for their attendees. And it's a nice value-added service in this world of CE where there's stuff everywhere in regards to continuing education. So
John Stamper, a better mousetrap, my friend. That is a better mousetrap for sure. Let me ask you, one of the questions that I always try to ask with leaders like yourself and especially entrepreneurs. I mean, you just mentioned 3.5 years of work, blood, sweat, tears, and information that you've gotten invested into this thing. What have you learned? I mean, what have you learned as an entrepreneur through that process and some of the other processes that you've implemented, even with Digital Tradeshow? What have you learned?
Yeah, if you're married, be sure to have an account at your local flower shop for your spouse. Because she deserves a lot of credit for just all the craziness. That's the first thing. The second thing, Sean, I think is, and it is so hard as an entrepreneur because we are, I don't know what it is, our brains just, we endlessly see these opportunities, especially if we're passionate about an industry. We sit down and we get an idea and we genuinely want to help. Like you said, we want to build a better mousetrap. It's just our makeup. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned is to try early on to focus on one thing and get really, really good at it. And
try to shut out all the other stuff.
Try to start all the
don't
other
let
things.
Don't let it in there.
No, I mean, look, I mean, from the beginning, I mentioned that a second reason why the company was started was because the other challenge I saw in a dental practice was when the dental assistant called at 6:30 at night or at 5 o'clock in the morning and said, I can't come in today. I'm sick. My kids are sick. Or the hygienist did the same. And then you're shutting down that op. and that's lost production, that's
Sure.
lost patients, or what have you. So we had actually created a job portal. We had created something called SubHub, where we were, obviously wanted to find a better way for practices to be able to find a substitute, all those things, and loved the idea. Was very passionate. We built it, but unless, like anything else, you have critical mass on the website, a lot of people using it, it takes a long time to get there. And so we gravitated more towards the CE because that was the product that the dental professors could use like right away. And I think that was really one of the biggest lessons, is just trying the best you can to be okay with, if solving one problem before you decide to solve 80.
No, I don't want to skip over that. I mean, as an entrepreneur, this is a constant struggle. You do always see opportunity, but you have to stay narrowly focused, or you end up being spread very thin, trying to spin all of these plates, when in reality, everybody would be better served if you just put the focus on the one thing. I'm curious, what is the biggest, what would you say is your biggest accomplishment in business, John, over the last umpteen years? And then I'm going to ask you, what's your biggest failure, and how'd you recover from that?
Yeah, I think the biggest accomplishment would have to be starting a company and still being in business almost 4 years later. Again, I think, and quite honestly, I think a big part of that is because of the industry that we're in. I think dentistry is a very special place, and it's one of those things where when you build relationships with people and you set out there to genuinely help and serve them, it's amazing how the people in dentistry give back, or they introduce you to other people. And so I think it's maybe, Sean, it's not so much the fact of the business side of still being in business 4 years ago, or 4 years later. It's looking back at the amount of connections in the network that we have established, and how rewarding that is. Because now it's certainly a lot different than it was 3 or 4 years ago, to where we still have a lot of the same challenges. We'll continue to have challenges, but there's just a different feeling. I feel very, very blessed now to be able to reach up and pick up the phone and call a company that may have a service that we don't have, and we can partner with. And we've got some exciting things going on with that. So I think it's just sticking it out, and like you said in the beginning of the podcast, valuing relationships and never losing sight of how valuable those are, regardless of what side of the business you're in.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, that's I would totally agree with you. I think that's the number one thing. Man, good stuff. Okay, what's your biggest failure, and how'd you recover? I've learned that great entrepreneurs, successful entrepreneurs, here's my philosophy. The bigger the failure, then generally speaking, the bigger the success on the other end. Guys that we talk to on a regular basis who are very successful have a laundry list of failures, and they wear them like badges of honor, man, like scars, like war wounds, where they've just rocked it through battle, and this is what they took away, or this is how they recovered. What's yours, John?
I would have to say, we touched on a little earlier, I think starting this thing out and thinking that with not a lot of capital, or I would say, for example, we were fortunate to be able to get some capital to build it and start it, but certainly not Silicon Valley capital, where we got Louisville, Kentucky capital, right? Not Churchill Downs capital, but anyway, very trusting friends and family and colleagues that believed in us. But I think, wanting to do a little too much at the beginning, and then not having enough people to do that. And quite honestly, going down the path of, that's the tricky thing about software, is in order to be able to get it out in the market to see if people will buy it and use it, you got to pay for it. You got to build it. And it's amazing to me, Sean, just how technology has changed since we built our original website and what it is now, and how much more flexible it is. And so I think there certainly was a lot of failures early on in regards to being excited about wanting to create something awesome for the market, but not truly understanding the time it was going to take, the cost it was going to take, and the people. and that. And certainly that was it was a hard day. We just recently did this just about a month ago. Is a lot of the first original features on the original site, the Dental Exchange. I mean, I had to call my developer and say, turn them off.
Wow, that's just like that's killing your child here. It's like,
you know what I mean? Like I hung up the phone and I was like, and it took me back to the days when we first started it and the hours we spent on the coding and working with the developers and the excitement, but just being like, I don't want to confuse the market, and it's not a service that we can support right now. It's not fair. And so, we made that decision. And
so how do you do that, man? How do you prevent I mean, that is the entrepreneurial lesson, right? At some point, all entrepreneurs learn that throwing stuff at the wall and see if it sticks. Pretty soon, you got so many things on the wall, and it's just overwhelming. It's too much, right? Some of them aren't working, and so how do you do that? What's the advice that you give? How do you force yourself to hone in? How do you rein in the entrepreneurial aspect? To focus and zone in on taking this one thing as far as it absolutely potentially can go.
So here's my analogy. I don't know if this will make sense, but it's a holiday in the middle of the week, so we'll give it a shot. It's a wacky week anyways. That's right. So I'll use a trick or treat analogy, right? So like when you're a kid and you're 7, you wear one costume one year, right? And then the next year, you're still that same kid, you're 8 years old, you wear a different costume, right? So you look different, but at the core, you're still the same kid. And I think that in a lot of cases, your core reasoning or your core service still applies. Right. And I think in our particular case, although it has taken a little bit of a different shape, it looks a little bit different. The original idea was to create tools and resources for dental professionals. The other side of the business was to also connect the dental companies with the dental professionals. And it looks a little bit different than what we had originally planned for. However, that's really where the Digital Tradeshow is the sense that it's still what I had originally wanted to do, which was to have a lot of these dental manufacturers and distributors be a part of what we were building. If we had an audience of dental professionals that were using the platform to track their CE or look for jobs, and they were in this one place, we felt like that would be a great place online for the dental companies to be able to share their ideas. So I think I would say that it's a lot of times it's the same thing. It just looks a little different. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, what a lot of companies are able to do is they're able to kind of define some of the core pillars that they wanted to start with. And you just have to shape it a little bit differently based on what the public wants and what works and what doesn't work.
And keep focusing on that core service, right? Yep. Don't allow yourself to get pulled too far away. No, that's good stuff. John, what would you learning all of the things that you've learned, what would you tell your 20-year-old self, my friend?
Whew. What would I
Dude, it's Friday. We got to go deep, man. Friday after a holiday. We're just right.
Well, not only is it Friday, but you have this inspiring scene behind you, where it's like, it's a beautiful morning and the cloud hasn't even moved.
The clouds have not moved the entire time.
Building back there. Yes. I would tell my 20-year-old self to be as curious as I always have, going back to when I was 20, whether it be wanting to learn about anything and everything, always wanting to get ahead in regards to reading and learning what other successful people have been doing. I've always been driven by that. I've always been fascinated by looking at successful people and really, really wanting to understand how they got to where they were. So I think that would be the same. I think what I would say is that, if I could find something early on that I was to be more in tune with what I was really passionate about when I was 20 and then stick with that. And instead of thinking maybe there's going to be some other opportunities out there and learn how to chase the right thing. I think a lot of times when we're young, it's part of it. We chase things for different reasons. And so that's what I would tell myself is if I could be intuitive enough to understand what I was really passionate about when I was 20, which maybe was, I don't know, surfing in Hawaii and, where the cool place was to be that night. But
Right.
find something that I really was passionate about and then stick to it.
Awesome. You're the first person that I've interviewed that I've actually asked that question, but I think I'm going to use that one. I think I'm going to ask that one.
That's a good one.
I think it.
You know how it is, Sean. Anytime your guest goes like this, whew,
yeah,
that's then the audience knows it's not canned. Like we didn't practice this.
No, that was totally off the cuff. Totally off the cuff. I think the thing that I would tell my 20-year-old self actually is something that you said earlier. And it just occurred to me. I think when I was a young guy, I spent so consumed with what is the secret. There's got to be the secret. What is the secret? I need to learn the how. How is the success? Where if I just knew the secret that these successful guys knew, I could get there. And I learned that the secret is there's no secret. As you said, it's all between your ears. And things like partnerships, I would have really focused a lot more on. Instead of just trying to muscle through on my own, I would have really, I've learned the value of partnerships over the last 20 years that I really had no idea about when I was 20. So, yeah, good stuff, man. So, John, I very much appreciate you hanging out with us for this time. I appreciate all the good information that you've given. How can my guys get in touch with you? Is it CE.exchange?
That's correct. Yep.
Now, so it's www.ce.exchange, right? There's no
Correct.
net or com or anything like that.
Correct. Entrepreneurs, man, we don't want to be like everybody else. Everybody keeps saying, got to have a .com. I'm like, you don't have to have anything. You just have to be able to find us. That's it.
It's that easy. ce.exchange.com.
I hope so.
And that's all the cool stuff that you're talking about with the Seee Tracking tool and with everything else that you guys have a lot of good stuff going on. John, thanks very much. I appreciate you hanging out. I'd love to have you back, and we'll talk about more. We'll talk about deeper stuff next time.
Sean, thanks, man. It's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure. I know we had you guys on my podcast, had a blast. I think we laughed for like the first 10 minutes, and then we actually talked about some really, really relevant stuff that you guys are doing, which is awesome. So again, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
John, I really appreciate it. Best of luck with CE and the Digital Trade Show. Look forward to talking soon.
All right, take care.
Take care of yourself.
All right,
this
bye-bye.
has been Dental Profits, the show that is all about you having happier clients, better results, making more money, and enjoying the ride. Several things we've talked about today are going to allow you to do just that, enjoy the ride. I'm Sean Crabtree. I'll see you next time.